Hi there, my name's Kate Adkins, and this is my last narrative presentation for my master's portfolio, and I will be addressing Prompt 3, an educational challenge. I chose to address the challenge of banned books in educational settings, and I started with what are banned books. The American Library Association defines the banning of a book as removal of the specified materials. This includes the removal of the book from libraries, reading lists, and store bookshelves within a specified community. Book banning is the most widespread form of censorship in the US, according to the Free Speech Center at Middle Tennessee State University. And sadly, children's literature has become the primary target. Books, specifically children's books, are typically being banned due to individuals, government officials, or organizations directly opposing the content, ideas, or themes included within the book. To cover the history of banned books, the first book ever banned in the United States was The New English Canon by Thomas Morton in 1643. And just like books today, it was banned due to its content opposing the customs and structures of the Puritan government who held power at the time. Fast forward to the present, the American Library Association reported that 2022 saw more attempts to have books removed from schools and public libraries than any other prior year this century. That exact number standing at 2,571 different books. Of these books, the vast majority were written by or about members of the LGBTQIA plus community, or by and about Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color. This graphic I'm about to pull up shows and outlines the percentage of individuals who initiated book challenges in the year of 2022. We can see that 30 and 28%, comprising 58% of the puzzle, were parents and patrons, with 17% being political religious groups. So, a very large chunk of the people who directly affect what we do in the educational setting had something to say about challenging or censoring books within the school system. Why are banned books a challenge in the educational setting? Well, creating an inclusive environment for students is of the utmost importance to educators. We want our students to feel a sense of belonging and community within the four walls of our classroom. The banning of books in schools due to the nature of their content, whether it be race, sexuality, or culture, silences these voices of students who might find a connection to these characters or the stories they read. Moreover, these books act as windows into different worlds that children may otherwise never experience. Exposure to these differences over time creates empathetic and well rounded individuals that can sympathize with differing viewpoints. This trend of reader suppression seeks to silence minoritized voices and prevent critical conversations. And that's from Ruth McCoy Lowry, and she wrote a fantastic article about why we're banning books in elementary schools. Continuing, why are banned books a challenge? Since 1981, the NCTE has taken a public stance against censorship in its position statement, The Student's Right to Read. However, that didn't stop many parents, stakeholders, school boards, and politicians over the past 30 plus years believing that it's their right to keep from exposing the children in our school systems to what they deem as inappropriate content. According to Peter Sprigg of the Family Research Council, removing certain books from libraries is about showing discretion and respecting a community's values. However, teachers and school librarians now find themselves in the crosshairs of a fight that they never intended to fight. So much so that we are preemptively censoring the books that we choose to include in our classroom libraries. A school survey done by School Library Journal found 90% of elementary and middle school librarians admitted to preemptively censoring. That means we're not putting certain books in our libraries. We're not reading certain books to our class simply because of what might happen if there is some kind of backlash about what we read. Because it's a challenge, there's going to be two sides, and you have to understand both sides. So I'll start with the side that is pro banning books. Schools are institutions for teaching academics, not culture, diversity, sexuality, or violence. Simple as. Exposure to the above topics at an impressionable age can have negative psychological effects. Parents, stakeholders, and politicians believe that educators are indoctrinating their students with their personal beliefs through classroom literature choices, and they believe that children should be protected from content that they're not yet ready for or do not understand. And this quote, as stated in the Michigan Reading Journal, As parents and community members work to reconcile their own deeply held beliefs with what they may perceive to be a threat to their own children's well being or the community's children, there are bound to be tensions. And that is what we are seeing in the news and media these days with all of these challenges for books to be banned and censored within the education setting. Now I'm going to move over to against banning books. We must meet the needs of all of our learners, and that means meeting them where they are in their literacy journey. Taking these books away from them or not giving them those opportunities to, be exposed to those books might be taking away from their feelings about literacy and reading. So we need to remember that when we are going to ban certain books. Supporting diverse and culturally significant classroom libraries also affirms our students' unique ethnicities, identities, and beliefs. Culturally responsive pedagogy involves teaching diverse history. It teaches children how to relate to their own family members and communities who may hold identities that differ from their own. And that was Akila Aline from the Center for American Progress. As I said before, it's a challenge. There's two sides. No one is right and no one is wrong. But meaning that there are two sides, we have to find a way to make it work within our schools. So, prevalence in my classroom and specifically the school system, I currently work in Cobb County, and that is the only county that I have worked in my teaching career. For the past 6 to 7 years, I wouldn't have thought about picking up a book twice and reading it to my class. However, in the past year, there was a firing of a teacher due to reading the book My Shadow is Purple, and this started a very large vetting process throughout the Cobb County School District. Each classroom library and school library has been vetted for inappropriate sexual content, violence, or too much cultural diversity or inclusivity of items or identities that might not be appropriate for students of the elementary age. However, in the classroom setting, I have a very diverse population. I have ELL students. I have students with disabilities. I have general education students who look like me. I think that because of my population, it is easier or not as challenging to tap into books that highlight different identities and cultures and differences between my students because my diverse population understands that everyone is different and we are not all the same. When you look at a school that might not have the same makeup or socioeconomic diversity that mine does, it might be a little bit trickier to understand and know when it's okay to introduce these books and topics. However, I will also say that the Scholastic Book Fair has been removed from our school and other Cobb County schools as a result of the teacher being fired for purchasing this book at the Scholastic Book Fair. So the issue of banned books and censoring of books within the educational setting has played a direct role in how I go about my everyday life and choosing what I do and do not introduce my students to in my first grade classroom. So when I look at next steps in the school community, I chose to have a team meeting and present about banned books just because I do have two brand new teachers on my team. They are first year teachers this year. And I do have two more teachers on my team who have only been teaching for 3 or less years. So I wanted to make sure that they were aware of the situation at hand and why books are being banned. As I said before, we still need to find ways to reach and reflect our students' lives. And there are books that we can use to do so. And I pulled out some of those books from my own classroom library to show to my teammates that it's still possible to reach and reflect and connect with these characters and stories in these books that our students can connect to. But I also highlighted that when we do this, we have to find alignment within the district curriculum. When we find alignment with the district curriculum and a way to connect it to a standard or content, we are choosing and being wise in the sense that we are giving our students what they need while also connecting to their lives and making sure it's inclusive for them. So that meeting with my team went really well. And I've also asked my principal if I can work with another teacher at my school who is also getting her master's to do a shared presentation on banned books and ELLs, because that's her challenge. So we're hoping to hear back about that soon. I think it's important for everyone within my school to know, especially those upper grades who do have more content being covered, and some of the books that they have used in the past have been censored or challenged. Impact and next steps in my classroom. As I said before, I have a diverse makeup of students. I also teach first grade. Some may say, oh, that's difficult. They are younger. Should you be introducing them to these concepts? And I will say that I find books that connect to my students' lives. I try to find culturally diverse books, and I try to make sure that my students see them in what I read to them. I'm not going out of my way to find things to introduce my students to that they might not need yet. I'm just finding ways to include my children in the stories that we read so that they can see themselves reflected in what we do. I'm also teaching my students that you're going to have an opinion on books, and that's okay. Just like we all have opinions in everyday life, you're going to have an opinion about a book, and that's fine. But sometimes our opinions about our books can be kept to ourselves. We don't need to go and we don't need to tell somebody else, oh, I don't like this book because of this, or I don't like this book because it has a character that looks this way, because sometimes opinions can hurt feelings. And if we're trying to make connections to what we're reading, and there's a child who connects to a book and this other child, I don't like this book because this person looks like this, that person's going to feel that internally and it's going to hurt their feelings. So we're talking a lot about opinions on books. And lastly, I've always said this, but I think it goes with the topic of banned books, the golden rule. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say it. If you want others, treat others how you want to be treated. If a student in my class likes a book, we celebrate it. They are excited to read. They are on their literacy journey. If a student in my class doesn't like a book, we put the book down and we move on. Treat the books how you would want to be treated. If you don't like the book, put it down, walk away. If you love the book, show it off, show it to other people, treat it with love. So imparting that into my students' knowledge and showing them that books are special and they are windows into other worlds, and we will all have different opinions on books, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't read it. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't recommend it to a friend. It just means that our opinions may be different from our friends. And here is my Works Cited page. That is it for my presentation for Prompt 3, A Challenge in Education. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.